East on the brink of a full-fledged war? That's a question many ask given the latest developments that have come in from the region. I have a very special guest joining me on this broadcast. We have Arsen Ostrovsky, international human rights attorney, with us on CNN News 18. Mr. Ostrovsky, many thanks for joining us for a detailed perspective on what you think this ongoing conflict means for the entire region and for the other world players involved. I want to first up understand from you, what do you make of the manner in which Iran continues to call it an act of self-defense, and so does Israel. Israel has been citing the same since October the 7th last year. Tell us about what you make of the ongoing situation.
Look, what Iran did yesterday was not an act of self-defense. It was an indiscriminate act of wanton aggression and terror. They fired over at least 200 ballistic missiles at the entire country. 10 million people were in bomb shelters. The entire country. India has a population of 1.5 billion. Can you imagine for a moment if the entire Indian country, entire nation was in bomb shelter? This is what was the situation last evening in Israel. This was an act of self-defense. This was a barbaric act of aggression and terror that will not go unanswered.
Mr. Ostrovsky, one thing is very clear, that Iran at this point in time, is citing the several instances of the recent past, from the killing of Ismail Haniyeh to the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah, to the pager blasts that took place. That's what Iran says needs to be acted upon. That's why they say this quote-unquote retaliation has been ensured on part of their forces. But we are seeing a lot of civilian casualties as well, be it in southern Lebanon. Of course, Israel was at the receiving end of some of the worst of the humanitarian crisis which is being spoken of. How do we view this overall in terms of the number of innocent people losing their lives to this crisis and this conflict?
Look, any time an innocent person dies, that is a tragedy. The difference, however, is whereas for Israel, every civilian death is an absolute tragedy, for Hamas and for Hezbollah, it is their strategy. Israel has gone above and beyond to levels unprecedented in modern warfare that no army in the US, in Europe, or Indian army has gone to this kind of level in order to avoid and minimize any harm to civilians, whether that be in Gaza or Lebanon. But Hezbollah, just like Hamas, is guilty of committing a double war crime. Both terrorist organizations, by the way, which act at the behest of the Iranian regime, both of them are committing the double war crime of hiding behind civilians, cynically using their own people as human shields, whilst indiscriminately firing at civilians in Israel, again, as we saw last night, with almost 200 ballistic missiles, as we've seen over the past year, with Hezbollah firing some 10,000 rockets, including on a daily basis, every single day, murdering or killing 48 people, including children, displacing at least 100,000, almost 100,000 people from the north. And exactly the same strategy that Hamas is doing in embedding in hospitals, in schools, in mosques, in apartments. In fact, even Hassan Nasrallah, the Hezbollah terrorist, when he was eliminated, was in a Hezbollah bunker underneath a residential building in Beirut.
Mr. Ostrovsky, what we're also seeing is slowly Israel being cornered. We see collective forces, Hezbollah, not just Houthis, but also the Yemen army in the latest has said that they have been targeting some of the military infrastructure of Israeli forces. And of course, the latest threat that's coming from Iran. With Israel finding itself cornered, just a US support, militarily speaking, you think is enough to take on these challenges?
Look, Israel, as you know, is fighting essentially what is an existential war on multiple battlefronts. From the south, with Hamas, in the north, from Hezbollah, including from Lebanon and Syria, the Houthis from Yemen. The one unifying feature of all of them is that every single one of those groups is acting at the behest of the Iranian regime. Iran is not some kind of passive actor. And this last night, did not come out of the blue either. We have to remember also in April, when Iran likewise rained down several hundred ballistic missiles, rockets, and drones at Israel. So Iran hasn't been sitting there doing nothing. Iran has been fomenting the hatred, the violence, the terror, and the support for these terror groups. Now, Israel, of course, welcomes the support we receive from our allies, of course, foremost the United States and others. We saw that Prime Minister Modi, by the way, also put out a very strong statement just the other day, which is deeply appreciated. So, of course, we seek the support of our allies, but at the end of the day, Israel, like any sovereign nation, including like India, like any country, when faced with such an intolerable situation, will do whatever necessary, whatever we must, in order to defend our nation, to defend our citizens, to bring home our hostages that are still in Gaza, 101 hostages still there now for almost a year, and of course to allow the residents in the north of Israel to return to their homes safely as well.
So you're saying all of these armed groups in the Middle East are not proxies to Iran alone, but they're very much active partners to Iran, perhaps acting on the instructions of Iran, and that's why we see now Iran standing up for them, which doesn't put Iran in a very convenient place because there are going to be consequences both sides no matter what. But Mr. Ostrovsky, many thanks for speaking to us here on CNN News 18. We'll reconnect.